so much for being here. You are at the Power to Fly and Software One's special chat and learn on power and possibility. Today's topic is work-life integration for women leaders. Um, you're all here today, so I'm sure you feel and struggle with how our increasingly hybrid and global, workforce, work-life integration, um, the work-life balance that we are looking for is more important than ever. So today we're super excited to bring you inspiring and actionable advice from a leader who's living this every day. However, before we get started, I just have some quick housekeeping. So here, you see our code of conduct. I'm not going to sort of walk you through it. A lot of this is, things we've all become very familiar with thanks to the amount of time we spend interacting virtually. But sum it up, it just says, don't be a jerk. Please approach this conversation and your experience today in a kind and thoughtful manner, and we'll all have a great time. However, if you do have questions or concerns, we definitely want to hear from you. Feel free to message either me or my colleague Sanmay in the chat. So, um, just though, however, we do want this to be a fun conversation. So feel free to turn your camera on. You don't need to be Instagram perfect. Nobody's judging here. If you do want to keep your camera off, that's fine too. Just so you know, we are recording this conversation, so you don't need to take notes. Just check your inbox after, a little bit after, and we'll be sending you a rewatch email in a few days. You'll also be able to find this conversation on our site on Software One's company page on powertofly.com and YouTube as well. Lastly, we do want to hear from you. So go ahead, introduce yourself in the chat. I can start us off. I'm Devishi. I'm an account executive here at Butterfly, and I'm talking to you out of Goa in India. So with that, please let us know your name, where in the world you're located, share your LinkedIn too. And most of all, we want to hear your questions. So if you have a question for Reshma, our speaker today, just drop it in the chat and we'll get to as many as possible. So also very importantly, if you want to learn more about today's featured company, about Software One, please go ahead and visit their page on powertofly.com. We will be sharing this link in the chat as well, or you can go ahead and scan the QR code on the screen. Now, on Software One's page, you will find information about the company, their benefits, and best of all, you can go ahead and apply directly to their open roles. Um, Also, go ahead and click the follow button to be sure to get updates on new roles and events with Software One. So with that, I'm really excited to introduce you to today's featured speaker, Reshma. So Reshma Upadhyay is a seasoned HR executive with 2 decades of experience in global leadership roles across technology, consulting, and financial services. So, as the global head of people and culture at Software One, she drives human capital strategies for a workforce of over 9,000 employees across 5 regions. Now, her work emphasizes aligning HR initiatives with business priorities to build high performing teams, enhance employee engagement, and manage organizational transformations, including mergers and acquisitions. So with that, I'm gonna, welcome Reshma. Welcome. Thank you so much for being here. Uh, I'm looking forward to diving into our conversation today. But before that, is there anything else you'd like our audience to know about you? Go ahead, Reshma.
Thank you, Devashi, and thank you, Power to Fly, for inviting me today. I feel very, very privileged to be here talking about this topic, which, as I said earlier to Devashi and some of my colleagues, is super close to my heart. And Devashi, thank you for that very good introduction. But I would love to share a little bit about me, who I am personally. So, as Devashi said, I have had 2 decades of career in HR, but otherwise, personally, I am a wife, a mother of two, a wife to one. As of now, one only. I live in Singapore. I've lived in 3 different countries. I'm originally from Bombay in India, but I've been calling Singapore my home over the last 17 years. And the reason why this topic personally resonates with me is because of all of these roles in my personal life that I have as a child, uh, as a daughter, as a mother, as a wife, as a daughter-in-law, as a cousin, as a sister, and the varied roles that I think all of us play. That's why this particular topic has always been something that has been close to my heart, and I'm very happy to be here and participate and share some thoughts here because I believe in uh, collective education can and empowerment, because there's no one answer to some of these things, but I think collectively we can overcome or learn from each other and share with each other some of our tips or quick tips or ideas to move forward. Thank you, Devishi.
Yes, 100%. And it's so important, in this day and age where everything is so hectic and balancing just, our personal selves and our work selves and our inner selves and our outer selves. This topic cannot be, more pertinent than it is today. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and start, sort of with some of the questions. Uh, I mean, just,
Absolutely.
jumping straight to the jugular, so to speak, how can leaders set boundaries without being seen as less committed to their roles?
Um, I think, setting boundaries, sometimes people think about it as commitments. And if you don't set boundaries, then there is a reduced commitment. Sometimes that's what is the impression that we have or people have. But actually, setting some boundaries is sometimes about clarity and actually brings in more sustainability and accountability, if you ask me. So, as leaders, I always feel that, to normalize setting the boundaries and encouraging our teams to do so. For example, if I give you my own example, um, I have 2 girls, 17 and 12, and I normally block my calendar from 5 to 7. And unless there is a really, really super urgent and important thing, which I absolutely can't move, I try and do not any meetings or any calls during 5 and 7. So, and that's my boundary because that's the time that my kids come home from school. I want to spend some time with them, have dinner with them. So I think normalizing and leaders kind of also emulating this kind of behavior, I think always helps people feel not so awkward with these things.
Yes, definitely. And would you say communication? That's a great tip to, sort of have something that you stand by and lead by example. Would you say communication also plays a big part,
Absolutely.
of that?
I think definitely
Yeah.
communication plays a big part because that brings in the authentic self, right? I think you need to be transparent to your team about and not hide or shy away because this is a part of our life. There is nothing wrong or sinister about, having dinners with your family. And I think when we model this behavior consistently, people see that you're walking the talk, and it moves from being present at work to a more of a purpose driven performance, right? What you're interested in, how you're performing, and are you doing your job rather than how many hours. The whole employment contracting, not your paper contract, but the contracting has changed over time, right? And in COVID, we saw that change quite a bit. But even before that, it was already kind of seeing a shift where organizations and leaders find it more important to how are people performing irrespective of where they are.
Yes, yes, definitely. And again, we saw sort of this huge just change in perception then. Sort of uh, continuing with that same theme, how can leaders model, that healthy? You shared the calendar tips, for instance, and communication. How else, do leaders like you model healthy work-life integration without setting unrealistic expectations for their team?
I think sometimes, it's okay to be a little bit vulnerable, right? And share certain challenges, concerns, because we all have them, right? And I think just because we are leaders, and I think women especially, I think all of us, including myself, and I'm guilty of that sometimes, and I have to remind myself that I don't have to be a superwoman all the time, and I don't have it all. And the one thing, there's this one quote that really first really bothered me and upset me, and then when I kind of thought about it and read about it more, I understood the more meaning of it, and as I progressed in my career. And that was by Indira Nooyi many years ago, I think, while she was still at Pepsi, where the headline said, "Women cannot have it all." And this was a very famous article or an interview that she was giving, where she headlined saying, "Women cannot have it all." And she gave her personal story about how she would miss performances. Sorry, this is like a touch light. It's a Okay, it'll come back on its own. Sorry about that. Now,
I hardly noticed actually.
okay. So she basically said about how she used to feel guilty about not being there for her daughter's school programs and things like that, and how women's career clocks and biological clocks sometimes clash with each other, right? So yeah, and when I read that first, I was like, and I was pretty young that time and in early starter of my career. But as my career has progressed, and family has grown and career has grown, I realized what she was trying to say in terms of, sometimes, yes, we have to make a choice, but we don't always have to make the same choice. It depends. And I think vulnerability and building that trust in your team, so that people can see that you're walking the talk, and you're just don't not saying it, "Oh, please shut it off," or "Please shut down, please take some holiday." But I think we need to walk the talk, and authenticity is quite key to making sure that our teams are not only do it, but also believe that they are not going to be reprimanded, they're not going to be judged, they're not going to be treated differently. So as a leader, I think doing that, I feel really important. I must admit, I'm guilty of not doing it sometimes myself, and I have a wonderful team who keeps reminding me of that. But as I said, it's a shared learning journey.
Yes. And I guess sort of going into that, it's very easy, I mean, no, it's not easy, but sometimes we're a lot harder on ourselves than we are,
Yeah.
on other people. So how do you tell yourself sometimes, right, that, hey, it's okay to drop the ball sometimes, it's okay to prioritize so and so thing over so and so thing? Like, how do you, sort of create that balance internally?
Yeah, I think it's a learned muscle, I feel, in terms of like it comes through. I personally think it has come to me through time, right? Because as a young mother, early in my career, I. I won't shy away from saying that it sometimes I did feel guilty of leaving the children by themselves, but uh, I I've been very honest. The one thing that I like was to make sure that my kids knew what I was doing and why I was doing it, and why was it so important for me to do what I was doing, and involve them in that conversation right from a very young age, and to share my experiences with them, so they see what I'm trying to do and why I'm trying to do. And that was a very important piece for me, to make sure that yes, sometimes I'm going to miss a few things, but it's equally okay for the father to miss those few things as it is for the mother, because sometimes we, as in society, sometimes we have very different standards for both the sets of parents, a male parent like a father and a mother, and to take away that kind of a sort of a unsaid, unwritten bias, right? That we carry in terms of doing this, and that slowly kind of you learn. And when you see that, you know, you, yes, you feel bad that you've missed something and you would have preferred not to, but when you see like your children are thriving, you're happy. And the one thing that I definitely believe in, if I am happy and content, my family will also be that, because that will reflect in my relationship with them. And I know it's easier said than done, but I think you have to practice that kind of every day. I don't think I've kind of mastered it, but I try, and that's all that we can all ask ourselves to do.
Yes. And I mean, it's really one, you know, what you mentioned about almost, because you're also in a sense setting yourself up as a role model for your kids and investing them in your journey. It's really wonderful when they're so proud of you. You know, like my mom worked at a time in India when a lot of moms, like I think there were 4 or 5 working moms in a class of 100. So you can imagine it was
Yeah,
very, you know, very niche. And I was so proud of her. I was like, yeah, she can't come for the PTA meeting. Sorry, you know, she's busy working. You know, I was also happy because I didn't want her to hear about, you know, all
yeah.
the complaints from the teachers.
Yeah,
But
I'm sure that
you know,
those days it might have been slightly. I mean, these days I think, sorry, but I think technology
yes,
has made it quite possible to remain
to
connected.
do.
I think in those days, I think it was fairly more difficult. But these days, with technology, it's a boon. It's a boon, but it's also a curse sometimes. But the technology has made it quite possible to, keep in touch or see the program on the video with some one person in the family holding it up, even if you can't be there, or recording it and such, right?
Yes, that's true, you know, so it's a bane and a boon, so to
Yeah.
speak. Um, you know, so as you know, as leaders, right? You there's I guess there's this added responsibility or onus, right, of your team, the well-being of the team, the well-being of the company, on you. The the I sometimes you're not necessarily looking at how, you know, your own well-being. How would you say, what are the warning signs of burnout that leaders should look at in themselves and in their teams?
That's a really good and interesting question, right? I think sometimes we forget to do this, a quick check in, but I think sometimes when people burn out, and sometimes your best performers actually who are performing at a very high level, burnout mask their burnouts very well. And I think that's the one difficult one that you have to absolutely should look out for. And you see signs sometimes that if you don't miss it, people withdraw sometimes. Their mood changes, they become more cynical, they become more forgetful suddenly, which is not their normal persona. So you can kind of, once you know your team better, you can make out sometimes that there has been a change. And I think from a leader's perspective, I think a regular check in or a regular conversation, even, it doesn't have to be a formal review conversation. I mean, you can absolutely do like pulse surveys and things like that, but a regular check in conversation, are you doing okay, you know is everything fine, are you, and asking some very pointed questions, and having that, creating that psychological safety for having a honest conversation with your team when you see that drop happening. I think work goes a really, really long way. So yes, there are formal techniques to do it, but I think the informality sometimes actually opens people up way more. And for that, of course, you need to kind of also have invested in the team and invested in that relationship, right?
Yes. goes back to the communication and
Yeah,
persona, and
absolutely.
and everything. What about I guess how does one spot the signs of burnout for themselves?
I would say that's the more difficult one sometimes, right?
Yeah,
Uh, and I I mean I would say the same, right? Like I think we know ourselves the best, right? Instead of somebody telling us, sometimes of course we don't realize it, but I think we need to have it would be really really great if we had that self awareness for ourselves, what makes us tick and what doesn't, and when we've had enough, right? And to catch that signs early on before it kind of becomes like a massive problem, and having to and accepting it. And I feel like people in my generation, I feel, have been taught sometimes, at least from an India perspective, I would say, or probably across the world. Um, I think we are in that unique place where we were at that cusp of having that liberated women. Everybody is working, everybody is home, is a dual income home, everybody's doing well in terms of educating themselves, going out and working. And that constant narrative, I think, that we had growing up is you have to do better than the previous generations of your grandparents, etc., which also added a lot of pressure for us to accept that we've had too much, and this is too much for too much for me. And again, I think to recognize that, and as I said earlier, it's okay not to have everything in control, because you would have to be really a superhuman or a robot to have everything all the time, perfect. So I think recognizing those signs where you know what's best for yourselves. And I can tell you my own personal experience. Our organization is going through a massive transformation because we have just acquired a really large organization, and going through some of, and that we are in the initial stages of the integration, which of course as you can imagine, from an HR perspective, requires a lot of hands-on work, and there's a lot of meetings, there are a lot of calls. And I did recognize this for myself, and I took 2 days off, and I said I need to shut down for 2 days, to rejuvenate myself. And I did that just last week, actually. And I took 2 days off, and I said, okay, I need some downtime. I need some quiet time where I'm not processing any information, whether it's from home, whether it's from work, whether it's from the kids. I just need some very flat out downtime. And I was lucky enough to be able to get that and find a window to do that for myself, because I felt like otherwise I was going to burn out.
yes. Yes, I'm glad that you were able to say, I guess, because I think we were all brought up with, I come from India as well, right? And from Bombay, I think we were all brought up with this idea of, there's nothing wrong. If there is, you have to make do, you have
Just
to
soldier
manage.
on.
Yes, yes. You're fine. You're fine.
Yeah, yeah,
Kind of be strong. You earlier you had we had talked you talked a little bit and this comes up so much about how technology, right, is
yeah,
both a bane and a
yeah.
boom, a boon. So in what way would you say technology can both help and harm our ability to manage time and boundaries effectively? So maybe we can go with harm first and then help, so it you know ends on a positive note.
Yeah. Look, so I have a global role, and I have teams sitting in Latin America and all the way into Australia, right? So two very opposite ends of the world, and I sit in Singapore, which sometimes kind of makes it easy and or difficult depending on which time zone I'm having to interact with. So again, kind of drawing on my personal sort of personal experience, I think where it is a bane is that you're almost sometimes 24/7 available, right? To pick up the phone, to have a Teams call, or to send something on a chat, and things like that. So I think that somehow the feeling of being available for long periods of hours, like, which is, I think that sometimes becomes a bane, because you see instantly it flashing in front of you, and then are you need to stop yourself from responding. Because it's okay not to if it's like 12 a.m., right? So I think in those senses, I think the technology sometimes becomes a little bit of a problem, where because the person who sent you the message, it's like the first half of the morning for them. Like if I talk about Latin America, Mexico is 13 hours time difference from me in Singapore. When I go to bed, they're just waking up. So I think in those sense, I think technology does sometimes causes a little bit of a challenge, the being available part of it. But of course, as we said, it also, which I think I referred to even earlier, it's also quite helpful in some sense, because it takes away some of the travel time, though I can't say that for myself more recently. But it does take away certain things that you might have to do, because you're able to kind of do it over the screen. You're able to do it over from anywhere in the world. Um, if you are away, if you needed more time away or some things like that, I think that makes it kind of quite easy. But to set norms, to set a no meeting block, to set email curfews, I've seen a good practice. A lot of people write on their emails these days that I am sending it when it's convenient for me, but you don't need to reply right now. A lot of people are kind of becoming quite, sensitive, to make sure that they're not, taking it for granted, about people's time.
Yes. We actually had an incident just when, I mean, it's funny that you mentioned that. We had an incident just when Powerfly had started, where our CEO was on a plane and she was kind of sending all these messages and, just catching up on a backlog of emails and things. And so there's a little bit of a panic because suddenly all these messages were coming through at these odd times, and people felt like they had to reply because it was from the CEO, and
Right.
her co-founder actually kind of sent everybody a message saying, please, it's okay, reply when you are in your work hours. It's just that she's on a flight right now and has all this downtime, but until then, everybody was like, oh my God, I need to call this one. I need to do
I
this.
can imagine. I mean, I guilty as charged. I do that sometimes a lot, because there's a lot of backlog in emails, and that seems to be like the nicest time to take some quiet time out on the plane and
Yeah,
respond to emails. But I do
exactly.
sometimes also try and delay the send, so that
Yes.
I'm not kind of sending it when it's not appropriate. Sometimes I do that, not always. I must again admit.
Yes. Bombarding people at 3 in the morning kind of thing. But
Exactly.
you'd mentioned the fact that you work with so many different parts of the world. You have a team spread across so many countries. Software One has hubs all over the world as well. Plus, with the new acquisition that can only have increased. There must be so many cultural differences, right? And going with the theme of today's topic, how do those cultural differences across regions influence expectations around work-life balance?
I think it deeply, deeply influences it, because, as we know, in some cultures, long hours are equated with loyalty uh, and doing work well. And in some cultures, balance is what they prefer and it's a sign of maturity, right? Because you need to be effective rather than and efficient rather than working long hours. So I think being as a global leader, being culturally sort of savvy, intelligent, and mindful, mainly mindful, I think is something that everybody should adapt as a leader, not only as a leader, but even as colleagues. When you have colleagues across the world, because a lot of us work in global environments today, right? So to have that kind of savviness, or even a presence that they might be perceived differently is super, super important. Because I think in some places, adapting that expectation makes it for a better sort of cohesive team environment, and not about and it feels more inclusive then, and you're valuing and you're respecting the values or things which are core to people. So having that understanding and having that front and center is absolutely very, 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 very important, I would say. And I think we could do more of that rather than less.
Yes, um, definitely. And one can learn so much along the way, and integrate the things that one really likes from other cultures. So, like, I
Absolutely.
love summer Fridays, for instance. It's like, what a great concept. It's like when
Exactly.
everybody's on holiday, and your kids are on holiday, it's nice to, push in more work,
Yes,
and leave a couple of hours early, for
absolutely.
instance,
No,
you know.
absolutely. I think those are some of the good things. I can kind of joke sometimes with my team that since I'm in a global role, I should get to pick what kind of benefits and leaves I want to choose from each country.
Yeah. Well, in that case, yeah, there's a couple of countries in South America that have a lot of national holidays. And I said, I want
Yeah,
to live there. You
yeah,
know, they take long weekends and stuff.
yeah.
And sort of talking about holidays, uh, what role should companies play in supporting employees' work-life integration? I mean, this is beyond offering flexibility, though, of course, that's important too.
Yeah, I think companies for a while now have become quite savvy in kind of making sure that they're getting the best out of everyone, right? But also the fact is that everybody operates differently. We spoke about how culture makes an impact on it, how technology makes an impact on it. So companies, I think, today are trying their best in terms of seeing what kind of things would kind of be preferred or get the best out of people in terms of making sure that, I mean, no company wants their employees to burn out, right? And it's not just a fad or a good to have, but it doesn't help the company at all if they have a majority of the employees are burning out or are not feeling great or not okay, right? So I think companies are being a very, 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 very mindful. I see in a lot of countries, even the government's kind of schemes that come up are very helpful. Like for example, in Singapore, every quarter, we have Eat with Your Family Day, where everybody is asked to go home on Friday early or switch off from work early if they can, right? So these are some things which I think it's difficult for global organizations to do like one size fits all, and a lot of things can be done more regionally and locally, which fits their culture, which fits their expectations.
Yes, that's true because there are certain things which, yes, it just wouldn't fly. I mean, again, like in India, for instance, some people stay longer in office because they don't want to get stuck in the train, in
Exactly,
rush hour, and but
exactly.
they might come in a little late to work in the morning
Yeah,
because
yeah,
for the very same reason, and because they want to send
exactly.
their kids to school. So
Absolutely.
there's
No, I mean, this is why I say that I think one size fits all actually is what kind of makes it more difficult, because not everybody will want to do that. So, if I take a personal example about when I used to, about 10 years ago, when my kids were younger and had early morning schools, I would prefer to come into the office by about 7:30 because I'm seeing them off. I'm free after that. I'd rather start my day very early, but also finish early by about 4 when they're back. And organizations that I worked for luckily did see that as not an issue, or no, not that it affected my performance. I think you need to kind of be aware of those things, and let employees kind of do those things as long as it is, but of course performance is important, right? So and keeping a mindfulness on that, I think, is of course great. So all of these things help, but there has to be a balance somewhere. Like you can't go all towards the left or all towards the right, because I don't think then that's valuable for the individual or to the organization.
Yes. I'm kind of, I mean, there's two questions that sort of arise from there, and I'm really a little torn about which one,
You can ask both.
but
We can go through both.
yes.
If I can't answer, I'll tell you I can't.
So actually, the first one that comes to mind is a little bit about um, there's a certain bias, right, that might occur, especially for, say, for working women, for working mothers. There is this, it's there even it's quite deeply entrenched, and slowly it's coming away. What practical steps can leaders take to challenge those kind of biases in performance reviews and promotion?
um, I think over here, I definitely feel like there could be more things that can be done. Right? We all expect that the organization and our leaders are um, there is an awareness and of the biases that they have. Sometimes they are not as visible, but I think together with the organization, we can definitely take more steps by, you know, advocating, listening, championing, and amplifying, right? In terms of things that are available in the organization and providing that equal opportunity to men and to women, right? It should not be gender specific, right? I also don't believe that, just because I'm a woman, I should get more. Even if I don't deserve it, right? That's also not equality either. But yes, women have to catch. But we feel I also do admit that women have to catch up from many years of having fallen behind on that curve. So I think the organization and the leaders need to play that role very effectively, make sure that that's front and center, and when they're reviewing these things like you mentioned, promotions, etc., it comes without bias and more to do with performance and ability of the person and experience of the person, where they can, make a difference almost and help. And I also feel like the male colleagues can be also great allies, not only women, but male colleagues can also be great allies over here, where they are amplifying a woman's voice, advocating for women, challenging the status quo. It's not only because we have to kind of collectively help each other to kind of make sure that the right things are happening. It cannot be the responsibility of just one.
Yes. Completely agree that it is a collective effort, it's collective consciousness, and therefore collective effort to kind of change it. We have a very interesting question that's come up in the chat, which talks a lot about like the emotional
Devashi, we've lost
ro-
you. Sorry, Devashi, we lost you for a few seconds, or at least I did.
Oh,
So I didn't hear the
okay,
question.
okay,
You could go back.
okay. Am I back now?
Yes, you are. You are.
Yes.
You are.
Okay, perfect. So this question was just about leadership roles and the sort of like emotional tax, right? That they can take on one. So how do you manage to uh, kind of like handle that piece of it, whether it's about managing conflict, negotiating between stakeholders, work deadlines, that kind of thing.
So I think this is where I think I personally believe that women are. I hope my male colleagues don't mind this too much, but I definitely do believe that I think women are far better in all of these things that you mentioned than male, because of the multitasking that we are always doing, whether that's at work or whether that's at home. in various different things, right? Work deadlines, negotiation. I think women have, in general, okay, I'm trying not to generalize as much as possible, but I do feel that women are have a much better EQ and a feel of the situation, which is why I feel like they also negotiate much better. They're much better in conflict resolution. Not making a broad sweeping statement that men are not, but I just feel that there is so much more that the women can give from a perspective, and that's, I think, is one of our superpowers. And I think we should not be fearful in using that superpower of our emotional intelligence, and do some of these things in terms of the balancing act, right? By using our various skills that we have at our disposal while learning new skills. But I think we're inherently born with this. I sometimes feel. And we should make this, I always believe in strengthening our strengths and working on our weaknesses. And this is one of the strengths that we should really try and use more of managing deadlines, etc., being more organized, being more planned. At least that kind of works for me, I can say.
Yes, 100%. Celebrating oneself and, being more authentic if possible,
Exactly.
versus, kind of trying to measure up based on everybody else's, strong points. I guess that's what brings balance. So speaking a little bit, going back to leadership or continuing along the vein of leadership, um, and women, what skills do you feel women leaders need today to thrive in, in workplaces that are in some cases challenging or also changing rapidly, in flux, that kind of thing?
Mm, yeah, I think that's a very, very good question. I think again, I will say that there are so many inherent skills that women have, and I think we should not shy away from using that, right? I think adaptability is one thing that in today's world is super important, because there's so much change that we are facing. And being part of a technology company, we see this at the speed of light almost. I feel like, by the time I wake up in the morning, things have already changed from one day to the other. So I think adaptability is a really important skill for women to imbibe. Again, I think influencing. Um, the power of influencing, I think, is really important, and I don't see this as a male or a female thing, but again, influencing is really important. The two other things specifically for women, I feel, is in today's world, is self advocacy. I think sometimes we shy away from there, because I think we always wait for being perfect before we talk about anything or do anything, and that kind of pulls us back. Sometimes we know, but we feel a little bit of the imposter syndrome, which is a word that's thrown around a lot these days. But also boundary setting. It's okay to set boundaries of what you want and how you want it. And I think these are some of the skills that women, it would help women to kind of also lead. And I said about empathy. I do believe in that. Yeah, I think these are some of the things which can become really powerful tools for women to kind of use while they are navigating a really complex environment these days.
Yes, 100%. And again, there's also so much about community, right? And being there for each other. And yes, going with that, I was so curious, has mentorship or even sponsorship made a critical difference? Ever, like, have you seen any positive impacts in your own career or elsewhere,
Yeah.
from those?
No, that's a very, very good question. And I think I would have to credit both mentorship and sponsorship, right, at different points of my career. And I think in my early career, I think mentorship played a very, very big role. And I also believe in not having just one mentor. Like, again, because I do believe one size fits all, I don't think always works. And it's okay to also have multiple mentors at different stages of life, or even at the same stage of life and career, where you're trying to kind of imbibe different skills or techniques or certain things that you think will help you in your career. So mentorship has been quite important and has played a very critical role in my early days. There are two or three people that I still even today go to and share some thoughts with and like bounce off ideas with, because I feel like their wisdom is only going to help me learn some aha moments, and I can get some pearls of wisdom and those aha moments from them. And I think in today's world, for women in leadership to get into leadership roles, etc., I think besides mentorship, I think sponsorship also plays a very, very important role, because you want a sponsor where you want somebody talking about your skills, about the value that you add, the experience that you have in a room where you're not present. And that's what a sponsor does for you, right? And that only comes through time and experience with spending time with people. And I've had the pleasure of that in SoftwareOne also, where I have moved roles. I started my career as the APAC leader, and then I have grown twice into an expanded global role, which has happened through sponsorship and mentorship by some of the leaders. So I feel really grateful and thankful to have that in my life. And I think, I think. Like you mentioned, women should help and support each other, and I feel like paying it forward is very, very important. And I feel personally quite strongly about paying it forward and helping other women that are coming up, and reaching out to them and making sure that you're supporting them as part of that journey. Yeah,
Yes, yes, most definitely. And you never know, tomorrow's leaders can be your best allies. For
exactly.
instance, there are
Absolutely.
people that
The
you
power of
raise.
many
Yes,
is never ever lost. It's never ever lost, the
yes,
power of many in
yes,
comparison to the power of one.
yes. Like that, there's a phrase, right, about the rising tide, kind of lifting
Everything,
every
yeah,
ship
along
and
with it.
every
Yes,
boat. Yes.
absolutely.
So that's kind of, sort of what it is. Continuing about leadership, how do you personally approach risk taking and decision making? You mentioned how in some cases having a mentor or a sounding board is really helpful. Is there, how else do you approach risk taking and decision making?
So I think most of my decision making, risky or non risky, uh, the question I ask myself is, uh, what would be the cost of inaction if we stay at status quo? Right? What is the cost of that? And that kind of helps me think through sometimes the decision. And again, I'm the kind of person who likes data, but I also rely a lot on my intuition. And I try to balance the both off. And I know a lot of times we tell people that not to use your intuition, use data, because data makes sound decisions. I wouldn't deny that, but the gut feel, I can't step away from my gut feel or my intuition sometimes. So I think I try and balance both, because and the other third piece of it is to have diverse voices, right? To ask the right questions, because sometimes asking the right questions brings you to the best decisions. And having the diversity of opinions in your on your team also brings out better decision making, because you're considering so many different angles, objectives, outcomes. So I think it's a combination of one or all of this, depending on the situation, is what I personally do.
Yes, qualitative and quantitative
Yes,
analysis.
yes.
So to speak. Um, and then, sort of uh, continuing along, so I wanted to also just ask, sort of there's so many industries where a gender balance is skewed. How can women position themselves for leadership opportunities in industries or roles where they, remain underrepresented? So it's still, very new in many cases, or perceptions are more, I guess, male oriented or different, shall we say?
Yeah. I think over here again, I'll start by saying what I did mention in one of the other questions is that it's okay to not be 100% ready. I think as we women kind of want perfection a lot of times. So unless we feel 100% ready, 100%, I think there was this survey or an article that I had read when there was men versus women were surveyed about how they apply for even jobs, right? Men will apply even if they are sure that they have 50% of the skills, whereas women tend to reach as much of 100% of the ask before they apply for a job. And there was a study that was done, I think, many years ago. Um, I think it's okay not to be 100% ready. I think the other thing is, I think for women is visibility, as I said, matters, not only from sponsorship, but about our own visibility and our own brand. I think that matters quite a lot. Uh, I think speaking up, taking like, high impact projects, seeking sponsors, not just mentors, building a brand which is about you. What do you stand for? What do you value? How do you show up? I think what are your strengths and values? I think those are some of the nuances I feel can be applied across industries, roles, positions, because it's not specific to one industry. Of course, you would have to have the skill or the technical knowledge of certain jobs, right? I can't become a rocket scientist if I don't know engineering and physics, the laws of physics. But this can be, but what I feel can be applied. I mean, keeping that part of the skills and the education ability aside, I think these are some things that I would tell all women to think about when they are looking at advancing their careers or building a role for themselves.
Yes. And, speaking of building a role for themselves, right? There's so much about, one, of course, hitting the glass ceiling, but also just about women having to fall off or leave the workforce for a number of different reasons. What advice do you have for somebody that's, say, starting out in their career or a little earlier, earlier in their career, to think about if they, want to have or hope to have, say, a leadership role in the future?
Yeah. So I have a little bit of a slightly, yeah, the view that I have, probably I'm not sure if it's different or not, but what I believe is that when you're starting early in your career, I think gathering as much experience, as much knowledge, almost inculcating like everything that you can learn around you. The focus should all be on learning and not. I'm probably a little bit old school over here, I have to admit. I think in early careers, focusing on learning, focusing on getting that experience is way more important, I would say, or at least I would give, rather than titles and levels and things like that, because that forms like a strong foundation into what you can build for yourself in the future. So, again, I would say, don't shy away from taking projects, or whether they help you, whether they brings with it a title or a compensation or things like that, because that will come if you are doing the right things. But I think do some of those things which brings you the diversity of experience that you can showcase, that you're not not siloed. I mean, you can be an expert, subject matter experts, if that is what you want to be, but you need to know what you want to be then. If you want to be a deep subject matter expert and an industry benchmark in something, then yes, you don't want to spread your wings into learning other things. But leadership roles, if it's something that you aspire, I think having some experience and some knowledge on paths which are not necessarily your core expertise always helps you, because you can kind of apply yourself in different situations in different places. So I think stretching yourself in that early career, I think always helps. I have to say over here, I'm going to do a little bit of a sponsorship of SoftwareOne over here. I think,
Yes.
and this is where I feel like companies can really play a really good role. So in SoftwareOne, what we have, what we call is the SOAR program. So we have an academy, of course, which brings in fresh talent, but the academy also has a very specific program called as the SOAR, where we give opportunity to women, specifically to women who have left their careers because of either any sort of family commitments or any other commitments, but want to come back into the workforce. We strongly encourage them. We give them projects. We train them on skills and things, and see if we have a role for them. And the first 3 months, we put them in different functions where they have some experience in the past. So I think this is not only a way for, I think there is a massive workforce out there that could be really helpful in this war for talent that we keep talking about. Every few years you hear this word war for talent. I've been hearing it for 25 years since I've been in the in the workforce. Every few years you hear this, and I think there is a very potential talent that's sitting out there who is now ready to come back to workforce. But I think we sometimes are quite judgmental about it, right? Because, oh, you have had a career gap of 5 years, 7 years, more or less. Oh, which means that you value other things than giving your 100% at work. I think those kind of biases and those kind of narratives, I think we need to try and move away from there, and organizations also need to help that in the society and bring normalcy to these things in society.
Yes. In fact, I was in a webinar yesterday where people were talking about resumes. So, while you're talking about this, and as somebody who also oversees the recruiting or that side of things as well, how would you advise somebody to be able to speak of these gaps, or pivots in their careers? What would you say, they should, how should they communicate it?
I think that they should be honest and authentic. I I don't see any other way to circumvent this. Again, from my own experience, in my 25, 26 years of careers, I've taken two breaks. One, because I was, for the first time, because I was a trailing spouse and a mother of a 6 month old when we were moving from Dubai to Singapore, and I chose that for myself, not that I was forced to. And I took a break and I explained that. Yes, it is, and those days, and this I'm talking about 18 years ago, and those days there were a lot of eye rolls still happening in the workforce saying, oh, you took a break for 1.5 year. But I did that again the second time when I had my the younger one, and I did take a break for a short time during that time. And I, when asked, I, or without being asked, I offer to talk to them about it and why it was important about it, because I wanted to do it, and it was a personal choice, and it was important to me as much as my work is important to me at any given point in time. So I think being authentic is important. Again, I would not I would say easier said than done, because as I said earlier, there are still biases existing in our society, in the workforce, in organizations with leaders, because they see this as you not being committed. But I think just talking about it more and more, I think to bring normalcy to this is the only way to get over it.
Yes, just being really transparent, and it's true. I mean, the perception of it has decreased considerably, and now it's almost like an asset rather than something that one
Absolutely.
hides. So, the time has flown. I can't even
Oh my God.
imagine. Yes,
Yeah, I just looked at the
we're
clock.
at, yeah. So we're at time. And Reshma, thank you so much. I really enjoyed our conversation and hope that our audience did too. Really enjoyed picking your brain and, hearing so much about your journey and advice that you've had to share, which you've done so generously and openly. Um, really appreciate it. Thank you so much for joining us today. And a huge thank you to you and your team at Software One for making this happen. To our audience, thank you for being here, and for submitting your questions. Really appreciate yours as well. Just a reminder, check out Software One's page on Power to Fly. I've just put the link once again into the chat. Register your interest. They're a really, really wonderful company to work for. I've worked with them as my clients for a few years now, and they're my favorites actually. Don't tell my other clients though. And and you can go ahead, apply for open roles. If you don't see something that fits you, you can still go ahead and register your interest by, being a follower, and message us if there's anything that we can help you with, and of course, to share your feedback. So thank you so
Thank
much
you.
again for being here. Wish you all a wonderful rest of your day, whatever time in the world it is for you.
Thank you
Bye.
very
Take
much,
care.
Rishi and Power to Fly and the team. I had a really good time talking to you and hope the participants enjoyed listening our banter.
Yes, I hope so too, and I suspect that they did.
Thank you, everyone.